There's actually a lot of different kinds of books on math. I have this book, and it's about double-digit addition. And I also have books like Jump Kangaroo Jump, and it teaches about equivalent fractions and the different animals in the camp that this kangaroo was at had to divide themselves equally into different groups, and it teaches about how equivalent fractions work. And I like those books because they tell a story and it teaches about the math at the same time. So it's interesting for the students, but it's also relevant for the math class that they're in. And it's easy to find books on shapes and counting and numbers and stuff like that for the younger grades, but it's harder to find books on harder concepts in math. And so I was really excited when I found this book. It's called What's Your Angle, Pythagoras? And it's about the Pythagorean theorem. And this book is more appropriate for 8th graders, of course, because 4th graders don't understand the Pythagorean theorem. But my favorite series of math books are the circumference books. And this particular circumference book is about place value, and it's called All the King's Tens. And it's really cute, and it teaches about place value in the hundreds, thousands, and different place values. And there's a whole bunch of circumference books. And I also have this one. It's called Isles of Immature, and it's about perimeter of squares and rectangles and circles. But the book that I want to do my book talk over is, of course, a circumference book, and it's called Circumference and the Dragon of Pi. It's by Cindy Neuschwander, and it is a math adventure, that's for sure. This book is about Circumference and his son Radius. They go out on a picnic, and Circumference all of a sudden starts to get a bellyache, and so Radius runs back to the castle to get some medicine. And silly Radius, it turns out it's the wrong medicine, and it turns his dad into a dragon. And so all of a sudden, all the knights are freaking out, and they don't know what to do because all of a sudden there's this dragon. And so Radius runs back to the castle, and he's trying to find a medicine to reverse his dad's being a dragon. And he comes upon this other potion. It's called the Circle's Measure. And it says, measure the middle and circle around, divide so a number can be found. Every circle, great and small, the number is the same for all. It's also the dose, so be very clever, or a dragon he will stay forever. So the stakes are pretty high for Radius. He has to get the dose exactly right, or his dad will stay a dragon forever, which I'm sure he doesn't want. So Radius goes around the castle measuring different things like the wheels and pie, an actual pie. And he realizes that the strips around that go across the pie are a certain length, and to get all the way around the pie, it takes a little over 3 strips to make it across. So he's starting to see a pattern with all the different things he's measuring. So he goes back and measures the wheel, and he tests the 3 and a little bit more idea, and it's about 3 1/7 times the diameter. And so he sees that it's the same for all circles. He sees that the diameter and the circumference all the way around are related. Okay. And so he goes back to find his dad and give him the right amount of medicine, but he wants to measure it one more time just to be sure. And so he measures, his dad had his tail in his mouth, and so he measured it all the way down, and he realized that it is 3 1/7 times. So he scoops out 3 1/7 times the amount of medicine and gives it to his dad. And he is saved. He is no longer a dragon, thank goodness. And so I really liked this book. It's interesting and it's fun for the students, and it's not too hard, and it actually describes at the back a little more about pi and about the number and about the symbol, and I think it's really interesting. I really like this particular book for circumference and pi over other books. This circumference book actually mentions circumference in it and the radius and diameter, but it doesn't go into as much detail as this book. So if my main goal for that day was to talk about the number pi and circumference, I would go with this book. But if my idea for the day was more perimeter or area, it would be this book. And so that's why I chose this book, is because it is different. This book is clearly about the number pi. It's and finding the proof that the diameter is multiplied by pi. The diameter multiplied by pi is the circumference. And in the 7th grade TEKS, it says that the student applies mathematical process standards to use geometry to describe or solve problems involving proportional relationships. The student is expected to describe pi as a ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. And so there are a lot of math books out there about circles and about circumference and stuff, just like this book. This book has circumference in it, and it briefly describes circumference in it, but it doesn't go into as much detail as the Dragon of Pi does. And so if I was teaching pi and circumference, I would definitely choose this book over other books that I've researched. So I think if you were going to teach a lesson on circumference and pi, then you should definitely use this book so the students can see the relationship between the diameter, the circumference, and of pi. And if you read this book to your students, then they'll be more likely to understand and to remember it because it's paired with a fun story and cute characters. And I just think it's really interesting how they connected all of these things. And even with all the other circumference books, they're always really good about talking about the subject and using math language that's easy for the students to understand, but it's also fun and interesting for the reader.